Hello there, and welcome to this St. Louis Blue 2034-35 preview. This is where I'm just going to ramble about the Blues. I don't know why I'm making this, because I don't know, but I'm just going to sort of break down. Now, well, not mentally break down. I did that a couple of months ago. Now, yeah. Ignore most of my ends. They were AHL fillers. I basically last in went through like all the 25 or 20. I think I was looking like max 26 and then reduced it down to 23. Just sort of players who could fill up my AHL and have like a bit of upside about them. Also, I got the GOAT Savade Thunder Chief. I'm fairly certain wasn't he like a former New Jersey Devil pick? No, he was a former Detroit Red Wing pick. Who I'm fairly certain they only picked because of his name. But either way, he's in the team. Load of draft picks signed up with the team. Got a couple of trades to discuss. Fairly certain I had some at the end of last year as well. Yeah. So I basically went, okay, I'm not getting Messi in free agency. Got some assets for Dak. You know, I got some assets for some AHL fluff, which I got a second for, which I then turned into King Kazu, actually. So that was a good trade. Now, I was originally going to trade off Paranovic. I accidentally traded off Matejchuk. But, to be fair, I did get Branwyn Zimmerman, who, I mean, he is pretty bloody good. So, I mean, I somehow fumbled my way into a good trade. I then went to the Canes, who were like, hey, I got this guy. Well, they posted in trade blocks, had a guy for free. I was like, okay, I'll take this. He was like, oh, I've also got a couple of other guys. So, got a lot of names who could maybe fill up my AHL in the future. Just sort of names that have a bit of upside to them. And if needed, I can give them a shot on the first team. If they do well, they could be a nice little fourth little liner or like a 7th choice D. And, you know, if they do, like, poorly, I mean, it's who really cares? I got them for nothing. And then I was like, okay, I want to, like, make my team younger. Because as much as I love this team, like, if I'm going to be serious about getting some assets in, I am going to have to trade off my older guys. Because realistically, I'm not going to have them in 3-4 years where I expect to actually be doing something. So yeah, Norlinder has gone. I got Adam Bavard, a second and a fourth. Now, Bavard is one of those guys who baffles me, because I looked at his stats. Like, I like this guy's stats. Like, he's got good anticipation and creativity. His skating is solid, but nothing special. He's a nice team worker. His determination is a bit low, but he has got nice flexion, face-offs, deflection off the park. Passing is good for a playmaker. Stick handling is a bit low. He's not really a defensive player, but he doesn't need to be a defensive player. He's a high-con player who's also a model pro, and he produces when the heat is on. Another thing as well is one of my scouts competitors, Sean Leach. Now, I know we like to take the piss out of the Kane system, but Sean Leach is pretty good, and he has a high knife ceiling, which would suggest to me this is a guy who has a high ceiling and can develop. And also the fact he's 25, we see in this database some guys keep improving to like 27, 28. I don't think this guy will be the Eichel improvement. That will probably be when I start going heavy tanking next year after Eichel probably leaves. If he leaves by the deadline, then I'll go heavy tanking at the deadline. Pretty much once I lose Eichel, I'm going to go heavy tanking, just because I'm not really doing that. But I think Millard will be a solid future. Maybe second line centre, but I'd be very happy with this guy as a third line centre, given he's high con, he's a model pro, so I think this guy will do well in the playoffs. His history in Washington was like poor. He didn't really play a lot for them, but I think he's a nice player with some nice upside who can add a lot to the team in the future. And he's also 25, so he's got plenty of time to improve. Now, going over the positions, obviously in goal, I am in the process of trading off St. Pierre as we speak. So yeah, that's happening. Like so St. Pierre is 29 and he's expiring. But also, like, lots of teams are going to look at the guy like St. Pierre and go, well, I'm going to take the gamble on this guy, you know, being like a 1A, 1B situation. Like, he had good numbers in short stints at me in Minnesota, and that 32-33 Minnesota team was not that good. And he had some solid performances in Montreal. So, yeah, I got him for a third. I'm going to try and flip him for a second, get some picks out of that. Because I've got other guys in there. Obviously, my boyfriend, here he is, yep, here we go, right, go on, make it Tyrese, make more jokes, yep. To be fair, though, he is very good. Like, I think the only reason he didn't put up great numbers against the Avs is because we get given them, like, 40 shots a game, which, yeah, unsurprisingly, they're going to score quite a few goals with that. Well, he did okay. It improved. He's still 26, and I mean, you can see up his attributes. Like 20 agility doesn't come naturally to a guy. And yeah, this is going to be a very good player. It's not even like a Lopez situation where it's clear he's shit. This guy's actually good, and he's high con. Now, other names in there, we have Maxence Lebe. Now, many of you never have heard of this guy. He's not good. At best, he'll be a future backup. But he is a Quebec boy who I picked up off the free agency last year when I was looking at some just sort of younger players. I wasn't doing it as hard as I did this year, but I remember I looked at goaltenders last year, and this guy appeared. He played in the QMJHL for a bit and done some solid numbers, so I picked him up in my AHL team, and he put up some solid numbers in his first year. His scout report is about as basic as you can get, and his attributes are absolutely terrible, but he has got nice agility at least, so he might be okay as a future backup to Millwall. Realistically, this is the kind of guy who I'm not looking forward to, but he's still on his ELC till next year, so I'll see how he develops. The only real major issue with him as a goaltender is his rebound control. Like, his positioning and reflexes are fine and can still develop. Rebound control could be an issue, but I think he's fine. The rest of my goaltenders aren't really needed. Dubois was some low-con pick who was like low on my list. This year was the guy I just picked up who is terrible. He's like a worse version of Lebe. And Morrow is a guy who was in my first team for a bit. Played like a one game in the AHL and won it with a .857 somehow, and just went down to the SPHL with my SPHL team. So yeah, that's kind of where I would place that. So yeah, my goaltending is fine. It's actually one of my better areas of the team. St. Pierre, he'll be going, but Lebe should step up into that backup role fine. Could even keep Lebe down in the AHL with Dubois, Dubois, and just go out and get some veteran goaltender. Could work, but yeah, Millwall will be the start. Now, defense has taken a shake-up. Obviously, Peranovic is staying. Nobody wanted him. But we also lost Matejchuk. Drysdale went. I think that was it. So yeah, we lost a couple of names. But we have got some new names in the defense. Obviously, LaRue was playing there last year, which is why there's only 3 of my defensemen last year. LaRue was playing defense last year, but he's going to move into a more central position this year. We'll get into that later. So obviously, we've got Savino Nelson. Don't need to explain them. 2 of the best D in the league. Peranovic, aging, but he'll do a very nice job on my second line. As you can see, his numbers have sort of declined the last couple of years, but he does good defensive numbers. Now, the rest of my guys are new. Now, when I was looking at UFA, so I was kind of looking at, okay, so while I think it was the second sim, I was looking at guys who I can go by. Okay, is this guy going to make my roster? How good is he? And the first thing that appeared is this guy. Now, Darian Silver, I've signed to a 1.2 times 2. He's a big 6'6" lad from North Dakota. I like this guy. He had good skating. He's a team player. His anticipation and creativity is 12, which for an offensive defenseman is perfectly serviceable. And he's got 13 poke check and 9 checking. Like, he's not useless defensively. He's got good off the puck and passing. He can handle the stick well. This shot is solid, but nothing special. And yeah, he's very fine. His agility isn't the best. He's not a strong player, but offensive defensemen don't need to be. He spent the last 2 years in Detroit and not really done a whole lot in terms of numbers, but his average has been okay given how fucking terrible Detroit is. And yeah, I mean, he's 27. He's not really going to improve any further than what he's done, but he'll make a fine addition to the defense, which is lacking a little bit this year. Given the outputches, and especially with LaRue now moving up into a more offensive position. Now, Zerman, obviously, one of the best young defensemen in the league. I'm hoping he has a big year. He'll probably be my second line this year with Sullivan. Zerman is also much better defensively as well. So, hoping those two do well together. Both offensive-minded players, but Zerman's a bit more defensively sound. Other names that came in, I bought in Matthew Lenecki for 800k for the year. I can't remember if this was last sim or... No, this was last sim. Now, this is a guy who had a brief stint on Detroit's roster a few years back and then went back down to the AHL for some reason. He's floated around a bit. But I thought he was worth a punt. He's got solid technicals, hard worker, good teamwork, good determination. Anticipation and creativity sucks, but he's a nice skater. Realistically, he's 800k, he's going to play my third line. Like, I don't really care. Other names were just some of the other fodder I drafted in, so got this guy, Brian Walker, who I thought actually looked okay. Not really got too much to improve. He is a guy who was at Rochester's AHL. Thunder Chief I already showed. Got Maloff, who, again, he's pretty terrible, but most of these guys are, but I just hope so them develop. Han Horan, again, this guy, pretty awful. And Carlson, who I think was one of my draft picks, wasn't he? Yeah, I drafted him in the 6th round. He wasn't too high on my list, I remember that much. Like, he's got a default comp, who's, like, got some upside, I guess, but I don't know. This guy didn't really scream to me as anything special, but he's still young. He'll be on my AHL this year. He'll be growing, developing. And, of course, he made my list because he's got really good mentals. And potential criteria a bit low, but if the guy develops, he could be okay. Yeah, that's the defense. Now, actually, no, it's not, because we have one more defenseman who didn't get tied up this year because he's terrible. Henry Amonte, who I did not draft last year. He was drafted, like, 7th round a couple of years back, so I'm never going to sign him. Left wing, don't need to introduce Joyce Barbaro, who the game thinks is my 4th best left winger. I can tell you for a fact he is my best left winger, given how he's 25 on a 5-year deal for another couple of years, and was a part of the best first line in the league last year. Other names that I don't really need to introduce are Vic Strand, who was like the best hitter in the league last year, and fucking insane. Neil Strop, who I got from Vancouver, who may not have done as well as I wanted at times, but he's, you know, very solid as a player. And also Sutherland, who, again, didn't really do as well as I hoped he might have coming from over from LA. But he did quite well in the end, got like a point every other game, and I'm hoping this year he'll do well. Other names include Gus Renfrew, who hasn't really been given too much of a chance on my roster the last 2 years. And when I have, he's been terrible. Zade Wisdom, who I just got off that trade of Dallas for Savino, who's not great, but I'm hoping him and Vic Strand have some fun on the wing this year together. Zink, who I got off the European free agency, I will probably put him on my AHL or keep him as like an offensive depth player. Other names include Elia von Bergen, who I picked up in this latest UFA, who had a very good season in the AHL last year and going to play there again. 25 years old, left winger, goal scoring winger, quick, good at shooting, kind of what you expect from this kind of player. You know what you're getting from these guys, like fucking 4th-line goal scoring where you're sitting them down and they get like 5 goals and you put them back in the AHL and you're looking at like 4 years and they're playing in like Denmark. Other names include Marcelo Loire, who I got off the latest one. I was actually a former 2nd round pick and just had a very good season. Physical goal scorer, so very strong. Very not that great, but hey, we'll add them to the team. Obviously, the best prospect in the NHL, King Kazu Stevenson, who I love, but realistically, I expect him to be a future bottom 6 player. However, I don't care. My delusion will not let me admit that. And Kalen Popovich, a young playmaking winger, who I got off this latest, who actually never got drafted because they're terrible, but they've been playing in the ECHL for a couple of years down at Greenville, who are a affiliate of Carolina. So came in, I was like, well, he's done some okay numbers, he looks okay, we'll drag him in, see what he does. Most of these guys as well got like a ELC or some other shit, so yeah. Now, other centers, obviously Jack Eichel, who I don't really need to explain to who he is. LaRue, who was playing in my defense last year, Bernard and Foster. Don't think I really need to explain any of them, it's kind of down here that it gets more interesting. So like, Foster was in and out my AHL. Actually, Foster, I'll quickly brief on. He had a very impressive time in the AHL last year. Put up 30 points in 28 games, so hoping he has a good year this year. But yeah, other names I got was Aaron Connolly off the UFA for a 1.2x1, who hasn't really been given a chance in the NHL. He's not great, but he might do something 4th line, just kind of supplying chances down there. We've got Jackson Janike, who has an amazing name, for a Devils 7th round pick, who has had some very good numbers in the AHL the last couple of years, so hoping he puts up a nice season for me. It'll be tough between him and Foster, who gets to my, him and Connolly, who gets to my 4th line. What I may end up doing is I might also end up pushing the way back into defense and go with Bavard or Foster in my top 6, but that might be suicide, but I'll switch around that in the early season. Why not? Shester Palov, who was a former 7th round pick from the team, who's fucking terrible. He's been in my AHL for a couple of years. Put up 73 points last year, but I can tell you now, he's not good. Elsewhere, we've got Wasey Nolan, some shitty defensive forward that was here when I came here. Dale Morgan, who I picked off the UFA, who, yeah, he's pretty terrible, but whatever. And then Hobby James, who has no anticipation or creativity, but he's got some okay upside. Only had 1 year, a couple of years back for an under-18 team, so I'm not sure what happened there, but hopefully he does something for us. Now, right wing, don't really need to explain who Alfano or Edvardson or Marchenko are. Those three names are fairly well known. If you don't know who Sam Alfano is, it's fine. You may not have heard of him. He only put up 56 goals and 98 points in the league last year. I know you've never heard of that before. But yeah, other names include Laudier, who put up 27 points in 65 games in his first year here, but then I kind of floated him in and out of my AHL last year. I might end up putting him in somewhere. Kovacevic, who is some trash-ass grinder, who if anyone wants him, I will literally pay you to take him at this point. Charles Vidal, who I actually think was one of the most underrated trades of the year last year. I traded him to LA for Tyler Gagnon, who played 17 games for LA, didn't score a goal, and got released. Vidal's put up, what was it, like 30 points, I want to say it was? Yeah, he put up 31 points in 72 games, giving him something like my 4th final year. Got himself a nice little 1-year extension with the team. I'm more than happy to keep him. He's excellent for what he does. He also had a good time in the playoffs with 4 points in 8, which wasn't bad, given we did shot for 4 of them. Duncan Dirk, who I got off the latest UFA, who was a former pick of mine, actually, in the first round in Anaheim. It was like 2029, so... But yeah, he showed some ability in Detroit, and again, he's the kind of guy who can float in and out of the AHL and see what works and what doesn't. And he's also very quick, which you can't really train into a guy. He has some nice upside to him, but whether or not he'll develop, I don't know. Other names include Ayerson Savage, who I just drafted in the 5th round. Has been playing for the Hamilton Bulldogs in the OHL, who looks okay. We've also got Edward Prorazic from the Czech Republic, who was a former 13th overall CHL import pick, but obviously hasn't really developed, but bought him because why not? The unsigned Zacharias Kelson, who's some defensive winger who was drafted like back in 2032 before I was here. Artem Kolmogorov, an undrafted Russian 2-way winger, who actually looks okay, and he is high con and strong-willed competitive. So I was more than happy to get this guy in. Want to see what he can do away AHL. Could be a solid 4th line depth winger in the future. And Ocean Pavan, another kind of fodder player. Been playing in the NCHA for a bit. Doesn't take shifts off. Nothing special. But again, like most of these guys were fodder picks. But hey, why not? But yeah, that's the team. Now as for coaching, Jeremy Culleton stays as head coach. No real surprise there. He was amazing for us last year. I kind of switched up my coaching staff. Didn't get everyone I wanted. I also went to rescout my scouting department, but I only got 6 scouts now, so I'm gonna have to fix that. But I've only got 3 coaches. Might go get a 4th, but to be fair, Vecchione is good at 2 of them, so I'll leave it at 3 for now. Brady Robinson, some goalkeeping coach who's pretty solid. Couldn't really find one with technique based. Riley Tufte, my defensive coach. Again, couldn't really find someone with the attributes I wanted, but this guy looked okay. And then of course, Vecchione, who is a forward and tactical coach who's technique based and very, very good. And my scouting department got a 3 buff, but I need to sort that out. But yeah, that's the 34-35 St. Louis Blues.